face in the sky and what their words in ashes turning black.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. As per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode of the show. Liked, commented, all that kind of stuff. Very much appreciated. Had a nice thank you email from Morgan at Spirit of Yorkshire. Said he was going to pass it on to everyone else to have a look at. So I haven't heard anything negative, so I have to assume that everybody was happy with that. So yeah, that was last week. So this week I might have mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I fancied doing a rum episode of the show. So ta-da! It's an independent rum episode of the show, and well, it's because it's become very much of a thing these days, independently bottled rum. I mean, you know, you go back, well, certainly to when I first started in the industry, 15-20 odd years ago. There wasn't any independently bottled rum, or very few bottlings, it has to be said. I certainly remember that I got sent a sample by AD Rattray of a cask strength sample of rum that they were planning to bottle, their first rum that they were planning to bottle, and basically sort of were asking the question whether to bottle at cask strength or whether to cut down to 46%. I said bottle at cask strength. It was stunning, but the general consensus was bottle at 46%. So they kindly bottled half a dozen bottles, I think it was, for me, for the shop, and obviously that's a bit of history. I doubt if that sort of thing would happen ever again. I mean, nowadays there are pretty much most independent bottling companies will be doing a rum every now and again. You've got certain independents that are like Kill Devil that just do single cask rum, so it's now very much a thing, and yeah, some of them are horrendously expensive. Spirits these days are, and there's no getting away from that. Although I have noticed that sort of rum purchasers don't seem to sort of splash quite the cash that some whiskey buyers do, shall we say. So the very expensive bottles of rum, that tend to sit on the shelf a little bit longer than maybe their sort of their whiskey counterparts. But anyway, while we're on the subject of independent bottlings, I had an email from a well-known whiskey retailer with cask offerings. I must admit I didn't realise that they did such a thing, but then they are a very big company, and I nearly fell off my bloody chair, I can tell you. So there was a mid-20s cask of Bamor. Have a guess how much you think that they were asking for it. No, you're wrong. You're way off. £62,000. Yeah, you heard that right. £62,000, and that wasn't the most expensive cask on the list. A mid-teens Lefroy, mid-teens, 77,000. I mean, why? I mean that I couldn't understand. And like I said, that was not the most expensive cask on the list. The most expensive cask on the list was a mid-20s Ben Nevis. Go on, have a guess. Nope, way off. £148,000. Yep, £148,000. I mean, who the hell is going to buy that? I mean, you're never going to sell a bottle of 20 odd or even 30 odd year old Ben Nevis to sort of recoup that kind of that layout. And I mean, the cheapest cask or casks on the list were some grain whiskies. I forget how old they were or when they'd been distilled. They were about £3,500. Now you might think that's actually not a bad price. Not until I tell you they were octaves. It isn't. Then you do the maths. No, that's just ridiculous. I mean, blatant and utter profiteering, it has to be said, and it just feeds in to the narrative of these cask investment companies that basically say, oh, you can make loads of money per year, investing in casks and what have you. Yeah. I get asked this question an awful lot of times, certainly at tastings, you know, whether I think sort of investing in casks is a good idea. And I always say, while there is absolutely zero independent regulation of the cask investment market, I wouldn't go there at all. And I mean, you know, they say don't invest in anything you don't understand or know about. And I know about cask sales, and I still wouldn't invest in it. You know, there are a lot of guys out there that really, you know, don't particularly like people that collect whiskey and have, you know, and that's fine. You know, you're welcome to your opinion, but there are a lot of people that do like to invest in whiskey. And you know, and I always say, if you're going to do that, buy bottles. You know, buy something you can physically have in your hands. You know where it is. You know you've got it. If it doesn't, you know, escalate in value, you can drink it. You know. Winner, chicken dinner, as they say. Buying casks, mugs game. I mean, you know, I don't doubt that there are a number of cask investment companies out there that, you know, are very legit. They're run, you know, to essentially, you know, make the investor a profit at the end of the day. But there's no guarantees on that, and there's no guarantees that these casks are not going to leak, disappear, might not even exist in the first place. You know, it's just. You know, I know that there's a group of these companies has kind of got together to sort of try and create some kind of framework with regards to this, you know, cask investment. And you know, there are a lot of people basically saying, well, you know, it's a bit rich, you know, these guys, you know, trying to regulate themselves. And well, yeah, I suppose it is kind of a bit like, you know, MPs deciding on their own pay rises and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, everything has to start somewhere. And if this kind of club, if you like, does lead eventually into some form of independent regulation of this kind of market, then, well, you know, that's a good thing. Because the last thing you want is basically sort of, you know, people to invest money and expect sort of not always, you know, ridiculous returns. You know, just expecting, you know, some kind of return, and then just find out that they've just been completely shafted. I know it happens all over the place, but you know, it's like I said, you know, if you do want to invest in whiskey, then just buy the bottles. That's far more easier. Anyway. That's enough of that, obviously. That has nothing at all to do with today's episode of the show or the independent bottling companies that have supplied samples for today's episode of the show. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to Mauritia Beverages, to Dram, to the House of Macduff, and to Old and Rare Rums for the samples for today's episode of the show. So not really much else to say apart from let's just take a look at today's one. Okay, so we kind of got a mixture of old and new releases, shall we say. So the first bottling we're going to be looking at is the Mezan Nicaragua. This is a 10-year-old rum. It was came from the CLN distillery, or the I'll try and pronounce the name, Compañía Licora de Nicaragua distillery, i.e. the guys that produce Flor de Caña. So this had spent 4 years aging in, I would imagine, Nicaragua, and 6 years in Europe, distilled in 2013 and bottled this year. Bottling number 2 is a Dram Clarendon Estate, Jamaica. I think this is the first bottling I've come across that's actually, well, at Clarendon Estate make Money Musk, and most Money Musk rums are called Money Musk. They don't normally tend, or certainly, should we say, the ones that I've come across don't tend to use the name of the distillery or the estate, for want of a better word. It's normally Money Musk. But anyway, so Clarendon Estate, Jamaica. It's a 12-year-old. Oh, sorry, the Mezan was bottled at 46%, by the way. This is bottled at 56.8. It's a single refill barrel, 1814, distilled in 2010 and bottled this year. Number 3 is the first of the 2 House of Macduff bottlings, so in their Golden Cask rum series. This is a 12-year-old Guatemalan unnamed distillery, but I would hazard a guess at Darsa, possibly, having tasted it. Certainly won't be, well, it's certainly no agricole character, so it's certainly not the other lot. It's bottled at 55.9%. It's a single bourbon barrel, code CR006, distilled in 2011 and bottled at some stage earlier this year. The fourth bottling we'll be looking at, again, another bottling from the House of Macduff. This is a Trinidadian 12-year-old, bottled at 60%. Ooh, 12 years old at 60%. Ooh, that's going to be a fun ride. So this is come from Trinidad Distillers Limited, the guys that make Angostura. That's one of the things I've always found really intriguing about rums, is that the vast majority of rums don't actually carry the distillery's name. You know, a lot of these rum distilleries have maybe one, two, or even more ranges that they have names for, and you know, it's just one of those kind of quirks, I suppose. So anyway, this is what possibly would have become Angostura. It's a single bourbon barrel, distilled in 2010, bottled this year, CR005. Back to Mezan, and this is the Mezan Belize from the Travellers Distillery. It's a 13-year-old, distilled in 2008 and bottled in 2021. 3 years tropical aging, 10 years European aging. Interestingly enough, this was initially aged in heavily charred American oak or American bourbon barrels before being recasked into white oak bourbon casks that had previously been filled with other Caribbean rums. So sort of like, you know, a rum finished rum, if you like. Interesting. And the final bottling is quite an old one, both in age and how long I've had the sample for. So I think I've had the sample sitting around for roughly about a year, and it's again one of those things that I just never managed to sort of shoehorn into a bottling, shoehorned into an episode of the show, I should say. So this is the old and rare single cask Uitvlugt, i.e. that well-known unpronounceable, well, I actually did a pretty good job there actually, Guyana distillery that was closed in 2000 and the still shipped off to Diamond. So this is 22 years old at 63.9%. Wow. What, that cask was as tighter than a gnat's chuff, as they say. So yeah, obviously distilled in 1999, so it distilled when the distillery was actually in production, and bottled in 2021, I believe, or 2022. Cask number 62. It spent 1 year in Guyana, and then the remaining 21 here in the UK. So bottled by a company that came out of the woodwork called Old and Rare Rums. I think it was a couple of guys that had purchased this cask and were trying to sell it off. I don't know whether they've done anything else. So yeah, interesting, it has to be said. So probably it's a bit of an outlier, it has to be said, considering that it's considerably older than all the other samples. So it's not really, I'm not really comparing it. It's just basically, well, I kind of really need to get it used up before the sample completely sort of evaporates, I think. But anyway, I've had a quick nose at it, and it's in absolutely perfectly fine condition. So we're good to go, as they say. So that's enough yapping. Let's do some tasting then. Right, okay, so let's kick off with the Mezan Nicaraguan. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Ooh, that's a lovely nose. Really minerally, I mean intensely mineral. I mean, it's unusual to come across such a minerality in a rum, it has to be said. Quite juicy, lovely tropical fruit, cantaloupe melon, guava, lemon, bit of green gage, apricot. I mean, gorgeously fruity, gorgeously complex. A little bit of toasty oak, some underripe banana. Oh, this floats my boat, it has to be said. Or floats my rum barge, as the case may be. A little bit of vanilla, a little bit of grilled nuts, not a huge amount of oak interaction, a little bit, enough to give it some nice structure, but it has allowed the fruit to sit, or the dried tropical fruit to sit front and centre. I mean, it is just gorgeous, delightful And then, like I said, you've got this intense minerality. It's just a very, very complex nose, it has to be said. See what the pals like. Juicy, tropical, well endowed, rich, unctuous, mouth-filling. Again, apricots, banana, melon, slight pineapple note as well. Oak bitters a little bit on the finish, but that really kind of works in nicely with the rich fruit and just sort of like adds a counterpoint. Again, there is a minerality at play here. Maybe not quite so much minerality as the nose suggests, but still some lovely minerality. It's just beautifully balanced. It's rich, it's generous, but like I said, it's got the sort of the bitterness from the oak, which just adds a sort of like a counterpoint to the richness of the fruit. There's the minerality as well. I mean, that is just a superb rum, it has to be said at the end of the day. So good start.
Tomorrow will you let me go?
Okay, so let's move on to the Clarendon Estate. Now, it has to be said that the Mezan bottling that I've just tasted is pretty well priced. I think it's about 50 something, I think. So, you know, at the lower end, at the 10-year-old level spectrum, I think, you know, there's still, I mean, all right, you can argue that 50 quid is still an awful lot of money, but, you know, when you think most 10-year-old single malts are now sort of 50 to 60, I still think there's, you know, a lot of value to be had in the rum market. But anyway, let's move on to the Dram or Monimas then, shall we? Oh, that's a gorgeous nose again. Very luscious, more honeyed. It's got that kind of almost late harvested honey character. Brown sugar, peach, melon, aromatic, juicy vanilla, dried grape. Silky, quite sweet, but again there is a balancing freshness there. I just love that. I mean, you know, I mean, I love all spectrums of rum. I mean, I love the sort of like the more edgy rums. I mean, I find sort of Hampton a little bit difficult. Well, certainly the distillery release anyway. It just kind of lacks a little bit of sweetness, but I don't mind. I love the sort of oily Guyana and stuff, but oh, you just, when you stick your nose in a rum that's as beautifully aromatic and juicy, you know, with a little bit of toasty oak and balanced, you know, it's just stunning. And 56.8% as well. And no, I'm not smelling anything. No nose prickle, you know, no intrusion from the alcohol. Just really, really nice. Let's see what the pals are. Some beautiful nutmeg and cinnamon spices just dancing on the tongue. Again, the palate is rich and luscious. There is an edginess there, an oiliness, that sort of slight, or not quite faintiness, but there's that edge to it, that sort of, you know, more natural sort of rum as opposed to sort of like the profusion of juicy fruit. And it just balances up really nicely. It's kind of morphing into an almost kind of menthol-y note on the finish, menthol, camphor, that kind of thing. And yeah, well, as we well know, you know, Jamaica is renowned for the broad, rich and juicy, but then on the other hand, you do have the more edgy rum, certainly sort of Worthy Park and Hampton and what have you. And this kind of like is just beautifully fruity, but just reminds you that there is a little bit of an edge there, shall we say. It doesn't need water. I'm going to put a little drop of water because I deliberately left a little bit just to see what actually happens, but it doesn't really need it at all. It's just absolutely divine. Still juicy, still fruity, a little less complex, maybe a little less honeyed, maybe a touch more spirit notes. there's a little bit more of that edginess has come out now. Sort of, it's a little sweeter-ish, but the fruit's kind of dropped off a bit, and I'm getting more of that sort of slightly edgy Jamaican character kind of coming through now on the finish. Personally, I think I prefer that neat. Water is absolutely fine if that's your kind of bag. All round, stunning. Stunning rum.
Let me go, stay away, stay away.
Right, okay, so let's move on to the first of the two Golden Cask bottlings. So this is the 12-year-old Guatemala. Let's see what the notes gives us on this then, shall we? Dense, soft. Do you know, it's almost kind of barleyed. It's almost whiskey-like. Yeah, I'm getting apricot, I'm getting slightly darker honey, vanilla, camphor, chocolate. I'm getting some almost kind of, I'm getting some lovely rye-like notes as well, which I'm guessing is probably coming from the cask. It's got that sort of slightly astringent rye-like spice note and touch of wood smoke, coffee, almond. Wow, 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 this is really, really complex. And like I said, 55.9, and again, I'm not smelling the alcohol at all. I could sniff this all day. I'm getting sort of hazelnut chocolate now. Oh, damn, that's a good nose. I love this nose. So the pass on. Bit masked. The alcohol is certainly making itself known on the palate, although only on the finish. A little bit less oak, a little bit more spirit character, a little bit more sort of edgy dried fruit, gentle vanilla, a little bit of toffee, a little bit of hazelnut, darker dried fruits as well. Quite rich, quite mouth-filling. The alcohol is balancing that up. It's almost kind of emphasising the spices, certainly on the finish. Less oak, like I said, but oh, it's just a beautiful rum, it has to be said. Very whiskey-like again. Elegant, you know, really nice. Okay, I'm getting more rumminess now on the nose. It's kind of brought out the rummy dark fruits. Honey. Not so much oak. The oak has been kind of pushed back. Again, I'm getting an almost kind of mineralness, a sort of almost salty mineral note. I mean, it might be possibly that it's picked up that note from where it's been matured in the UK. Maybe it's been matured or had spent some time out near the coast, maybe. But like I said, distinct mineral saltiness. Let's see what part I know. Oak has softened up quite nicely now. It's rounder, it's fruitier, more rummy, loads and loads of dried fruit. Again, there's that minerality on the finish. It's just really seriously impressive rum, it has to be said. Yeah, damn good. Right, okay, so let's move on to the second of the Golden Cask bottling. So this is the Trinidad, the 12-year-old Trinidad. Let's see what nose gives us on this thing, shall we? Yeah, I can smell the alcohol, but again, I mean, it's not sort of, you know, considering it's a 60%, it's still not too intrusive. It's plenty of slightly high-toned column still dried fruit. So far, I think the majority of them have had quite a lot of pot still character. I mean, but this is really showing lots of column still dried fruit, that lighter dried fruit, that sort of dried apricots and sultana, touch of pear, apple, oh, some lovely spices as well. I mean, again, it's got that slight edginess, a slight tightness. I mean, well, you know, it is 60%. We are going to expect that. but it shows a completely different character. And here we are, sort of, you know, we're not talking about a sort of like a big, luscious, you know, dried fruit tropical monster. You know, this is kind of edging more towards that slightly seriously proper rum kind of character, but not too far into that kind of style. But, you know, sure about that. Yep, masked finish completely. Quite mouth-watering, sort of herbal menthol finish to it. Fleetingly, it gives you that lovely sort of broad, almost kind of, you know, Jamaican Trinidad-y kind of character. You know, rich, broad, juicy, dried fruits. You can feel it underneath all that alcohol. A little bit heavier, but still, again, I'm getting sort of column still dried fruits. Real lovely intensity, as we said. This is one that really does need a little drop of water. Let's see how it opens out, if it does open out. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's got that lovely softness, a little bit more herbal spice. It's not made a huge difference to the nose, because the nose wasn't as kind of masked and tight. I mean, that little tightness that there was there has disappeared. I will say it's a little bit simpler, which is often the case when you dilute a spirit. You do lose some of the complexity, but you know, we'll see if it what it does to the palate anyway. That's opened out, chewy, soft, a little bit straightforward, it has to be said, but you know, lovely weight to it. Bit more oak, bit more toastiness. I mean, that's a lovely rum, it has to be said. I think if you're going to drink it, it needs a little bit of water, but then you have to accept that you are losing a little bit of complexity. Although, in saying that, when it was neat, the alcohol kind of really sort of shut down that palate, and it kind of it kind of hinted, I suppose, to a certain extent at a level of complexity, and maybe just diluting the alcohol, it just didn't quite live up to the expectations. But even so, I still think that was an absolutely lovely rum. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Mezan Belize. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Quite herbal, slightly edgy, sweet, honeyed fruit, green apple. There's a citric edge there, sort of almost kind of tamarind, a little bit of melon. There's a sort of, again, there's a nice kind of almost agricole-y kind of feel, but again, there's a weighty sort of dried fruit tropical feel. It's possible that the finishing casks are adding some influence to the Belize notes. I certainly don't recall it being an overly kind of agricole-esque kind of style coming from the distillery. I think it's more kind of, I'm fairly certain, column stills. Yeah, as my notes say, yeah, triple column. And there is an element there, but there's an element of kind of pot stilly kind of weight, which I'm guessing is probably coming from the finishing casks. Although in saying that, the oak is relatively subtle. It's not adding an awful lot of vanillins and that kind of thing, so I imagine quite well used casks. A little bit of wood smoke maybe, toast. I like this. This has got a lot going for it. It's quite subtle. You need to kind of spend some time with this particular rum, and just kind of, oh, now I'm getting some toasted almond, and a little bit of roasted banana skin. I mean, it's just one of these sort of rums where you just need to spend some time with and get, each time it's delivering something new. It is pretty damn good, it has to be said. Let's see what the palat's like. Edgy, mineral, camphor, menthol, almost kind of verging on the agricole. More column still, dried fruits, less of the richer kind of pot still, in inverted commas, kind of character. We're sort of more traditional, we're more sort of straightforward kind of rum, although it has a lovely complexity. Again, the oak isn't quite as noticeable as it is on the nose, but I am getting a little bit of grilled nuts, a little bit of almost kind of coffee, I suppose. There's some lovely banana, but it just has this vibrancy to it. Not a minerality. There's certainly no mineral notes kind of that I can pick up. The vibrancy is more citric. I like that. I think that's a really lovely rum at the end of the day. I think maybe the nose is kind of showing the being a bit disingenuous to the palate. I don't know. It's sort of quite intriguing, it has to be said. Maybe the palate isn't quite as complex as the nose, but I still like that character. I still think that's really good. Okay, so finishing off with the old and rare single cask Uitvlugt. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Oily, dense, quite funky, herbal, bit of manure, burnt wood. It's got an elegance. It's got a cognac-y dried fruit character, an aromatic touch of spice, vanilla, little bit of tropical fruit. I mean, you can smell there's some alcohol at play here. You wouldn't have probably guessed at 63.9%, it has to be said. It has that sort of old Guyanan oiliness, and you know, I love the Guyanan edginess. I love what comes out of Diamond, certainly when they use the and no, you know, and the thing is, it just has that sort of edginess, that oiliness, that intensity, that it just smells old. You know, it just smells mature. I mean, it's not cheap at all. But my God, that's that complex. I mean, that's one hell of a cask, it has to be said. I mean, it's just, you stick your nose in it and you're just getting all these secondary and tertiary characters. It's certainly not about your generous kind of tropical dried fruit. We've kind of gone beyond that now, and there's sort of like remnants of that, but remnants in a good way, if you get what I mean. It just reeks of age. It really does. I mean, I mean, you know, you do get old spirits that do smell old. Honestly, they do. But sometimes they just don't smell that old, if you see what I mean. This really does smell that it's 20 odd years old. I mean, stunning. Absolutely stunning. Let's see what the palat's like. I'll try and keep a little drop to put some water with, but there's not a great deal of remaining. You wouldn't have said that was 63%. I mean, that's so well contained. I mean, that's just incredible. Mature, creaky a little bit, maybe. There's a little bit of rose petal note kind of coming through, and it's just got this gorgeous age to it. Oily sort of Guyanan character, sort of edgy herbal notes. Dark wood spice. Wow, I mean, that really is very, very intense, really incredible. It's just, like I said, it just has that sort of wonderful sort of old oxidized kind of character to it. It's delicate yet sort of 63%. I mean, I'll put a drop of water with it and see what that does to it. I mean, sometimes they often fall apart when they're sort of spirits are very, very old and very, very high in ABV. They can often sort of fall apart. That's not fallen apart at all. That's become more funky, more herbal, more woody, a little bit more manure-y, old. You know, it's just a stunning nose. It really is. Yeah, it just smells like an old Guyana whiskey to me. Guyana rum. See what pass on. Really oily, really funky, really earthy, really intense. Maybe I think I'd possibly stick with that neat. I mean, you know, the alcohol is so well contained that, yeah, it does mask a little bit on the finish. You do lose a little bit of the intensity of the whole thing when you put a little drop of water with it, and maybe it becomes overtly oily, but it's interesting. Like I said, it's really old. It's just an incredible piece of history, it has to be said.
Tomorrow will you let me go?
Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show. Like I said at the beginning, big thank you to everybody that all the companies that have given samples for today's episode of the show. So the Mezan Nicaraguan, right up my street. Lots of lush tropical fruit, really juicy, just a gorgeous rum. The Dram Jamaican, again, a beautiful rum, really complex, lovely melding together of the Jamaican styles, the sort of the broad juicy fruit character, along with the slight edgy, more sort of funky kind of character, which showed up a little bit more when it was diluted. The Guatemalan, again, almost whiskey-like, really barleyed, really intense. Again, just an absolutely stunning rum, it has to be said. The Trinidad, I mean, still a very, very good rum, but just sort of putting a little drop of water with it, I wouldn't say didn't do it any favours, because that's being disingenuous, but it made it a little bit simpler, a little bit less interesting, and, you know, overall, but still, you know, a really very, very good rum. The Belize, I liked it. I mean, it's a lovely rum. It's just kind of almost a tale of two halves to a certain extent. The nose kind of like gives you this kind of sort of column stilly kind of character, along with a bit of pot still, although there is no pot still character, which is coming from the casks that they've used. The palate, less so, more typical of a column still rum, it has to be said. Less oak influence, still really, really nice. And the old and rare Uitvlugt, stunning. I mean, just stunning old rum, stunning old Guyanan rum. I mean, if you love Guyanan style, if you like that oiliness, that sort of verging towards a slightly more vegetal style, then, you know, not an agricultural, vegetal style, you'll love that. I mean, that's just blown me away, it has to be said. With that sort of age, yes, it's an expensive bottle, but, you know, if you love old rum and old good rum, hello, old good rum, stunning, absolutely stunning. Anyway, that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I hope you enjoyed it. I think I know what I'm going to be doing next week, and well, it might not be next week actually, because next Saturday is the Nottingham Whisky Festival. Hopefully I will see a number of you there. I shall be there obviously with our new bottling, the second half of the Stoisha cask that I did last year. It's available on the website to purchase. We haven't received the stock as yet, as I believe it was bottled on Wednesday, I think. It's $75.95, and in my personal opinion, it's worth every penny. So if you are about and have tickets for the festival, you'll get the opportunity to taste it. If you are unfortunately not able to do so, you can buy it on the website, and I'll ship it out to you as soon as I've got stock. And Yeah, I think you don't need me to tell you that it's bloody good. I mean, it's, the first half of the cast was good. I think the second half is possibly even a little bit better. Anyway, until then, until next time, whether it's next week or possibly the week after, good afternoon and good ramming.